Hey guys, welcome back to these little videos I've been making. I've been having lots of fun making these videos for you guys. Unfortunately, this one is going to be my last video for Halloween. But other than that, I wish you guys a happy Halloween, you guys. I hope that you guys are staying safe still. So go get a drink, go get something like a little snack, and I will see you guys after the intro. Okay, you guys, so the first story that I'm going to talk to you about is I saw these online and I'm just gonna read them here on the side. And this one is about La Llorona. If anybody doesn't know La Llorona, she's like the crying lady, you know, leyendas and stuff like that. So just like any other night, I lived in a trailer with my mom and dad. My youngest brother was staying with my aunt this night. I fell asleep watching Jay Leno as usual, and when I woke up, I was on the sofa in my living room. The time was 4 a.m. The television was off, and normally I had a light on, but this time it was pitch black. I woke up and I heard a horrible screaming that was coming from far in the distance. The screaming was coming from a ditch that was a few feet away from my house. I heard it and I thought I was hearing things. I asked myself, am I dreaming? Then I started to hear the animals outside howling and whimpering. These animals that I speak of are cats and dogs. The screaming got closer. The animals continued to cry. The screaming was something I never experienced ever before. Ay, mis hijos. In a huge panic, I quickly got up from the sofa and ran to the kitchen, which was right next to where I was asleep. Not much happened after the first time I heard her. An incident occurred with my aunt about a year after my encounter. According to my aunt, they were sleeping and suddenly there was a horrible sound coming from the ditch located in front of their house. It was about 2:30 a.m. when my aunt was awakened by screaming women coming from ditch. She figured maybe somebody was being hurt or attacked. She walked out to the front yard looking towards the ditch and saw there was no women. My cousin, her daughter, walked out the front as well, asking what was happening. My aunt, of course, had no idea as the screaming grew closer. They saw her, a woman in a white dress. The only thing that shook them to the bone was the woman had no feet and was clearly floating. One other feature that threw them off was that this woman had no face. They both just turned after seeing that and ran inside their house. My aunt locked the door and called the police. In the early 2000s, when I worked here in El Paso, Texas, about 4 a.m. I had the back doors open and I was taking the empty milk crate outside in the back. I was working with two other guys at the time of the incident. One of the guys, named Art, thought it would be funny or as a joke to lock me outside. When I heard the doors close shut, I knew he was just messing around. I thought to myself, I will just stay quiet and wait for him to open the doors again. I wasn't going to give in to his joke of trying to scare me. About 1 minute later, in the far distance, I heard screaming. I heard, ah! And I thought to myself, it's the same screaming that I heard when I was 11 years old. The screaming got louder and closer to me. It felt chill down my spine and I felt that I was being watched by the same unseen force. I felt a sense of hopelessness. It was a feeling unlike any other. I started pounding the door. I yelled, let me in! Let me in! I could hear Art laughing on the other side of the door, starting to kick the door harder. The screaming was now coming from right behind me. Just then, Art opened the door and said, what the fuck is that? Just then, I ran inside and locked the warehouse door. Art said, why was that lady screaming? Did she need help? I told him that I don't think that was a lady. I told him what had happened to me when I was younger. Art told me, Jay, don't you think maybe you are cursed or she's following you? I stayed quiet when he told me that. I couldn't work my shift normally after that. I took a few hours to get over what happened. I was scared and maybe R was right. What if she was following me? There is one more incident that took place right after. In 2015, I started working as a custodian at Cedar Grove Elementary. Behind the school is the border highway, then the Rio Grande, of course covered by a huge metal fence, separates Mexico from El Paso. I worked the night shift from 2:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. One night, I was stuck working with another custodian until midnight. Right when we were about to leave, we do a walkthrough of the school to make sure all the doors are locked on the outside. I worked with another custodian named C. C always told me that he has never believed in ghosts up until the night I can say. We walked to our cars, and just as I was about to leave, I saw that C had opened his hood of his car. Then he asked me, "Hey Jay, can you give me a jump? My car battery is dead." I told him yes, of course. Just as I stepped out of my car, a loud screaming came from the Rio Grande. All the animals in the nearby neighborhood started howling and crying. Once again, the screaming resembled a woman screaming her guts out in a hallway as it echoed all over. C looked at me and said, "Oh my God, is that a demon?" I told him, "No, C, that is La Llorona." He looked right at me and said, "No way, she can't be real." Then I said, "I've heard her before." Then C said, "Hurry please and let's get out of here." I gave him a jump, and just then we saw a border patrol jeep speeding towards the screaming women. Just then, I thought to myself, I can record this and share it with the world. I took my phone out, and just as I hit record, the screaming faded away. C and I looked at each other, and he said, "What the fuck? Sorry, I'm leaving before the evil will come back to get us." We both left, and the very next day, C was telling everybody at work what we have heard. We are in the second stories about duendes, or how I say it, elves. So here we go. When my grandpa was 19, his cousins and him decided to go to the hillside to hunt deer. The hills were almost forests of small towns an hour away from the closest city of Guadalajara, Mexico. They began the hunt in the morning. My grandpa and his cousins had to move through big bushes and trees in silent steps with the rifles to hopefully hunt a deer. They decided that they would space out and hopefully find a deer with the intersect in the middle of the forest. My grandpa is moving slowly when he hears some rustling a couple feet away of him. He follows the noise and makes his way through a big bush and expects a deer, but instead he finds 3 elves. The 3 elves are laughing at him, and my grandpa feels as though he lost control of his body. One of the elves began to move his fingers in a circular motion which causes my grandpa to do flips. The elves laugh at him and continue to make him do absurd things such as making him fall and making him run into the tree and fall. At one point, my grandpa loses consciousness. He wakes up to his cousins shouting at him to wake up. My grandpa is dazed and confused, but tells his cousins about the elves. They ask him where he'd go because they were looking for him for hours. My grandpa's confused. A year after the incident, my grandpa has a dream. In his dream, he encountered the 3 elves again. The 3 elves apologize to him and feel bad about taunting and missing him in the forest. They tell him that they want to make it up to him by granting him one wish. The catch is that he'll need to find a very special tree in town at midnight, and they tell him he knows where it is. My grandpa wakes up and can't believe what he just dreamt. Later that day, he thinks about where the tree can be, and to his surprise, he knows where it is. The tree belongs to his cousin, and it's the only tree of its kind in the town. My grandpa calls his cousins to make sure if the tree's from his dream, and it is. Midnight hits, but my grandfather never went. He stayed home that night, and that was the last time the elves ever made contact with him. It's going to be our last story. It is called Skinwalker Encounter. This story is probably the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I live in Montana, where people are known for sighting the tiny people in the mountains and skinwalkers. This story is about a skinwalker. I didn't really know what a skinwalker was until I encountered one. Me and at least 5 other people decided to go out and have a few drinks to celebrate one of our buddies' birthday. We will call him Bill. It was July 15, 2017. We were over at his house smoking and having a few beers. One of my buddies said we should go do something scary. Everyone agreed. Being the cross-faded people we were, Bill said that there was an abandoned barn on his land and his parents always told him to never go over there because of reasons. He said he will tell us the reasons on the way. We all get up and leave and started to walk to the barn. The barn was at least 20 minutes away. That's pretty far. It was nothing but grass and open fields because he lived on what used to be a farm, so there was a lot of acres of land. Bill started to tell the story of his great-grandfather, and how he used to beat his wives in the barn to teach them lessons. But one day, once he was finished beating one of his wives and chained her up, his fingernails started to turn black. He started to scream that he was on fire as his skin slowly turned more black from the fingertips all the way up to his head and covered his whole body almost like he was getting burned. Once the story was finished, we got to the barn. We all looked over to it. Came to the barn. It was quiet with no bugs or rats to be heard. We walk around the place. One of our buddies pulls out his phone and shines the light so we could see. He shines it at the horse entrance of the barn, the door at the back. We see a tall white figure. Its eyes glowed like someone was taking a picture on a cat. Its back was arched up, and it had crawled on its 2 legs and its 2 long arms. The arms had huge claws on them, almost looked like a wolf but without the fur, and it was just staring at us. It was staring right at me. I was dazed in fear, and one of my friends had to knock me out of it, and we all ran. Once we left the barn, I looked back to it staring back at us. We ran all the way back to the house, not looking back after that. We all decided to stay out in the living room. It was the smartest thing since we were in a group. One of our friends said he couldn't sleep on the floor, and he begged Bill to let him use his room to sleep. Bill let him. We all fell asleep about an hour later. We woke up at around 3:30 a.m. to hear an old man screaming from Bill's room. It wasn't his father. He was out of town, nor was it a friend. We all tried to get into the room, but it was locked. I told everyone to back up as I kicked the door and barged into the room to see our friend curled up in the corner, covering his face with his knees. We all walked over to him and tried to convince him it's okay, it's just us, but he pushed us away and said, "Leave me alone." We left the room not knowing what had happened. We hear the front door open, and something heavy barged out of the house like it was crawling through the house. We run outside with the flashlight, and we see the tall white figure we once saw before run back to the barn. It ran like it was jumping. Ooh, almost like a lion does, but more air in between the run. Our friend still doesn't want to talk about what he saw that night, just remembers throwing up and being scared. I soon started to talk about this story when I went camping with friends a few months after, and they said I encountered a skinwalker. We never have gone back to the barn ever since. Alright you guys, so this concludes all of the videos of Halloween series. Please be safe, stay safe for Halloween, spend it well with your partner, with your family, with your children, and I will see you guys on my next video. I'm making the story even sorry. This is so nerve-wracking. How we do? Oh my god. No.